Greetings, magical mages and spiritual sages. Welcome to the Age of the Mage podcast. This is episode 66. I want to share an experience today with you that I've just had recently because I think it is meaningful. I think we would all perhaps be able to benefit from the kind of a thing that happened to me that and how it was explained to me. So, let's just start right off. I had to travel a couple hours away. Well, I was actually taking my little dogs in to get them some grooming, and it's about an hour away from my home, so I knew I had about a 3 hour round trip, 3 to 4 hour round trip. And I headed out, and there weren't any weather problems of any kind. And I always kind of bless myself and my car whenever I start out on any car journey. So I had done that. And these are pretty easy roads. There's not a lot of traffic. It's a semi-rural area, and I got onto a highway that I've traveled many times before, and it's about, I think you're supposed to go like 55 to 60. So even though it's kind of a country highway, um, depending on where you're at, you might have 2 to 4 lanes, but anybody turning onto the highway always waits until the coast is clear because nobody stops. There's no stoplights, there's no stop signs. It's just a straight through, driving at 55 to 60 miles an hour type of road. So I was out on that road, which I've driven many, many times before, and I saw some people in a car, that obviously were going to merge into traffic eventually on the road. And I might have slowed just a little bit. I'm going to say, like, if I was going 60, I might have just out of habit slowed maybe down to like 55 or something as I was approaching where they were going to come, eventually be turning from. No intent to stop, of course, or anything. And lo and behold, they just pulled right out in front of me. And I screeched my brakes and my car fishtailed, and I was lucky to be able to stop at all, probably about a foot away from their car. And they were just sitting right there in my lane, and they were going to make a left turn. So they were just sitting there. And we just stared at each other. We were just a foot apart. And it looked to be a normal couple, older age there, and he smiled and waved, and I just kind of looked at him puzzled, like, this is not what you want to be doing. And anyway, so he went ahead, and I think he backed up because the other lane coming the other direction had traffic. So he would have, if I hadn't hit him, someone else would have. He was definitely not, you know, turning onto this road at the time he should have been. Now, I went on through, and I didn't feel, too shaken up by it. I still felt fairly calm. I know things can happen. People can accidentally make mistakes, have their mind on other things. And so these types of things happen, of course. And I wasn't angry. I was in good spirits. And I knew I had about, I want to say maybe another half hour to get to my destination. So on I went. And I'd say maybe 5, 10 minutes away from where I was going, I was on another highway. This is much different. It kind of winds up around a mountain, and it was a narrow 2-lane highway, but it's straight enough that it has a speed limit on it of 50 miles an hour. So it's pretty good. You're going along at a pretty good pace. And I was on that road, making my last, stretch of road till I entered into a more residential. And I was going along, and all of a sudden, a pickup truck just came on my side of the road. And this time I had nowhere to go. We were both going about 50 miles an hour, and there was nothing to my right at all, like just a drop off. And if I went over to the left lane, I was afraid he would change back, into his proper lane, and then he'd hit me there. So I didn't know what to do. I didn't have much recourse. So I tried to stop and slow down, and just probably in the nick of time, he looked up and hadn't realized, I don't think, that he had veered all the way over to this other lane. He was probably looking at his phone or something and quickly, turned back into his lane. And we missed each other by just, inches too. Again, I had this kind of strange feeling like I was calm and I wasn't shaken, I wasn't angry, but I sensed like a strange energy. I hadn't really figured it out yet, and I had about 5 more minutes to go to get to the place I was taking the dogs for some nail trimming. So on I went, and when I got there and she came out to the car and got all the dogs, I was sitting there waiting. I had about a 20-minute wait while they were getting their nails done, and I was thinking, wow, this is I was thinking back on these two almost accidents. They were both very severe. I mean, if we had hit each other in either case, we would have had some very, very serious repercussions. And so I was thinking, this doesn't happen to me every day. I mean, you might have people just not looking and maybe come over into your lane a little, or even I've made mistakes. We all have where, we've gone before we should or something, but they're kind of they're little near misses. They might amount to fender bender type things, but they wouldn't necessarily cause a total, collision with very serious things. And I got thinking about how close these two had come. And I was just thinking, gosh, I need to be very careful as I head home. I need to really, really watch my driving and watch everything I can. And suddenly, like this happens to me, so this is something I'm familiar with. I suddenly got this message in my mind, which there is a there's a sense that it's external to me, when I get these things, that it's from guides or from another dimension instead of myself. But I got this very strong message that said, it doesn't matter how careful you're going to be driving home. There are things happening at an energetic level, and that's what you're up against. These near accidents, those people didn't see you. And they were being, so I'm giving you the whole thing, even though it took just seconds for me to get the message. It takes longer to explain it. In other words, they didn't see you, they were being manipulated from another plane. And unless you deal with that plane, with that etheric level, perhaps astral level, something, definitely not the 3D, you won't get home because this is all happening and being created on one of these magical, spiritual, etheric type planes. And it really was a powerful message that came in very strongly. In other words, no matter what I did, no matter if I creeped along and went slowly home or whatever, I had to keep up the speed limits in some cases, and all it would take was one more interference, to have a very serious accident occur. And I always, like I say, kind of bless myself. I established kind of this bubble of protection around my car, but it had never really occurred to me to worry about the lines between spaces. For example, like let's say I am going to go see my son. He may have a protective etheric shield around him. I may have my etheric shield in place around me. And it really has never occurred to me to worry about the pathway between us or the line between us, whatever you would envision that to be. Um, Whether it is a connection that's just a love connection through an etheric space, or whether it's an actual road that I'm going to take, in order to go see him. And that was this message came in very strongly that I had to ask for protection, not just on my car, not just around me personally, not just that etheric bubble, but I needed to ask that protection would guard the entire pathway home and that no interference would be allowed onto that path. So I did. I sat there and I used ways that I personally feel most comfortable with. Everyone has their own ways of doing these things. And I re-blessed myself, re-blessed the car, and then I sat in silence, quiet, and I asked for protection to exist along any path I took to get back home. And I, not only asked for protection, but I also projected my own intentions, my own personal magic along those lines as well. And good news, of course, is that I did make it back home safe and sound with no other events. But this became quite a significant message as time went on. So we've had some amazing visitors with us the last few days, and we've just been sharing all kinds of information with each other and personal stories and experiences and some of the visions we have for our projects. And it's been just truly wonderful. And as we continued to talk about this, it came in for me how this is more significant than I first realized. And now, sitting with it for a few more days, I have now come to the conclusion that this is going to be part of what all of us will need to be doing. So there is this compression of energies that we've talked so many times about that parallels our time, our our spot right now as Earth and as Earth humans on in this space-time continuum where we are approaching this timeline divergence, and we're in this kind of critical spot with a lot of pressure on us, with all kinds of decisions and narratives floating around and choice points that we have to make, and so on and so forth. And I think part of this is also seen in what we've been told would be a lot of merging of dimensions and boundaries between dimensions becoming thinner perhaps, and more experiences with other dimensional factors and entities, things like that. So this all makes sense to me that here we go. Here's an example of reality shifting just a little bit, and yet it makes so much difference. And that this importance of blessing the entire network or your linkages is now coming up, front and center to take a look at and to perhaps assign some more importance to. I think it's always been the case. I do believe that high magicians everywhere have been aware of this and have definitely worked with energies and magic that protects entire networks and things like that. But this may become even so important that we each know this as individuals for our own lives. And this has really settled in on me as a very, very important message to share with you. And we'll be approaching it from different vantage points in the following podcasts. And as I had worked through most of the magical archetypes previously, I still had this one archetype kind of hanging out there that I never got to cover yet, and it's the Weaver. And now is the time, of course, to cover that. So I am getting the information that I believe is I'm getting inspired with the Weaver information, and I'll soon be publishing or posting that podcast because this is going to tie in so strongly to my experience and to all of us out there. And what we now need to think about when we say that we're doing protection for ourselves, when we're going to be doing this, we need to give this extra thought to every energetic line that is connecting into us or that we're sending out, or the pathways of our intentions. Evidently, those also need to be included now in our protection prayer work or protection ritual work or meditative visualization work. So that is the message I want to really leave with you today. And I will be back soon for more podcasts. And in the meantime, I wish for all of us added safety, added security, protection, and the peace that comes from knowing that we have that. And I will return soon and say goodbye for now.